everyone, my name is Kat Savage and I'm a professional artist, clinical hypnotherapist and well-being expert working with those in the creative arts sector. In my line of work, I get to meet some amazing, colourful people, from actors to artists, people who live their lives by their own rules, fueled by passion and determination to bring their unique talents into the world. I wanted to discover what it took for people to leave the usual 9 to 5 and hop on a dream, to capture their bravest moments and share these meaningful conversations with you, so that together we can explore the ideas, emotions and moments that could potentially change our lives too. The Brave Moment podcast begins now, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, probably the bravest moment not only for my guests, but for the whole world. So let's keep talking, have some fun, and enjoy the show. This week on the show, I speak to fellow synesthete, artist and performer Jody Elms. Jodie's extraordinary music career has seen her play the Royal Albert Hall with the London Philharmonic Orchestra at just 12 years old, playing the globally transmitted Live 8 in Paris, achieve a #1 hit single in Italy, and then onto the MTV Music Awards in Milan, where herself and Marc Cerrone performed at the Palace of Versailles to 100,000 people. After COVID hit, Jody, like most artists, had to find a new outlet for her talents. Being a gifted artist, Jody decided to begin painting her synesthetic experiences of how she sees music in its various hues, shapes, and colours onto canvas, and was instantly commissioned to produce the album cover for the single When Love Breaks Down from award-winning songwriter for Aretha Franklin, Bryan Adams and Shania Twain, to name a few, Elliot Kennedy. On the show, we talk about our mutual experience with synesthesia, the challenges one faces when living authentically through their art, and of course, Jody's brave moment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the imagination of Jody Elms. Jody Elms, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, Kat. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. It's so lovely to hear your voice after such a long time. So first of all, I just want to know, how's your lockdown going? What have you been up to?
Oh, it's been quite a year. Yeah. On the one hand, on a personal level, all the space has been quite beautiful, actually. Lots of time just exploring nature and getting into different aspects of creativity that I haven't explored before. But then, of course, it's had its challenges too. I think I'm getting to the point now where it would be nice to meet up with a friend and have a coffee, sit outside a coffee shop and talk about life. But yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that you're okay and it's all good. So I'm going to take you back now into your childhood and just ask you, what was your childhood room like? Can you describe what you can see around you in your mind and what were your favourite things in it?
Oh, I like that. Good question. Okay, so my childhood room I would describe it as the fridge. It was always freezing cold. It was down on a ground floor, and outside of the room was a pond that had a little kind of waterfall that's always babbling away. And my mum insisted upon keeping the window permanently chocked open 12 months a year. So it always had this really kind of cold, slightly damp air about it. My favourite thing about that room was the wallpaper. I had like this bobbly kind of white, pink kind of pearlescent wallpaper. And I used to love the touch of it and the feel of it. And I used to kind of pick the wallpaper off with my nails. That makes me sound a bit nuts, but that was something that I really loved about the room. I was forever moving my stuff around. So it never stayed in like one particular shape. I could never quite get happy with where the bed was. And I had another wall. Sorry, it sounds like it's all about the walls, but I did like the walls. I had another wall that was blank and I could kind of like draw all over it. And I had a little rock that if I got frustrated, I'd throw that at the wall. So it had dents in it too. So yeah, that's my kind of key memory of my childhood room. I also had a mannequin head that I loved. It was a polystyrene one. And strange child. I really wasn't into dolls and things like that or your regular toys. Yeah, I think I was quite destructive. Yeah, drawing on walls, murals at an early age, penciling my mannequin head, that kind of thing. A bit Shining-esque, I suppose.
Do you know what? Just hearing you describe your room, it absolutely explains so much when I hear you talk like that. It leads me actually really, really nicely onto the next question, which is, did you ever think you'd grow up to be an artist?
Do you know what? I think yes would be the answer, but not in the way that it's manifesting now. I think I always hoped that I would find a place in the music industry. I remember being really obsessed with David Bowie and Madonna. I used to do what most young kids do, dance around my living room with my hairbrush in front of the mirror, pretending to be those people and, embodying this kind of bigger persona. And I was thinking the other day, did I have an inkling at any point about art in terms of painting or drawing? And I had this memory come to me of, I think it was early one summer's morning, and I was up in mum's room, and I don't know why, but there were shells in the bedroom. And I remember getting the shells and making these patterns with the shells on top of the colourful quilt and being really pleased with the way the patterns and the shapes were appearing in front of me. And I remember just having this feeling of you can create stuff and make things look kind of beautiful. But at that point in time, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to go on to be an artist.
That's really, really interesting, because I know that being synesthetic and appreciating it and seeing and feeling colour and shape and all of that kind of thing, that's almost like an early representation of what you were sort of tapping into now, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I spent a lot of my childhood in my head because the internal landscape was so vast and so forever moving, and different hues and colours kind of exploding into being. And I think, yeah, definitely there's a huge link between those early childhood experiences and the escapism also it probably provided. We all go through difficulties in childhood, and by putting on a record, I could kind of disappear into this world of fabulous colours and movement, and maybe also a link. I mean, I don't think this is the case for everyone, but certainly for me, I'm very dyslexic. So I think the arts were, at that point in time, because there wasn't huge amounts of support for people with dyslexia, it was an area where I could really kind of get my teeth into and express myself, where, say, in English or maths, I was struggling to, get to grips with what on earth was going on.
How did school affect you as a consequence then? Because obviously you do have this very, very vibrant inner imagination. Did you find that because of the combination of dyslexia and this inner world that you created for yourself, did you find that you thrived at school, or did you find it was a bit of a battleground?
Oh, man, school for me was just hard work. It really was. I remember always feeling like, what is going on? That's my prevailing feeling at the start of every lesson is what on earth is happening? Everyone around me seems to know what we're doing, what's going on, what's happening next. And I was every day was what is this what's this thing about? What's this learning thing about? What's the point of all of this? And it was really hard. I've got to be honest. It was really tricky. It wasn't till I was doing my A-levels that I started to get a bearing on things. And that was primarily thanks to a really good, I don't know what they call it now, but at the time they called it the special needs department. And they figured out, and they labelled it this, although I'm not sure I would label it this now. They labelled it organisational dyslexia. I personally think it's more linked to synesthesia. I don't think it's a dyslexic issue. So essentially, I can't hold a time in my head. I get very confused where I am in the day time-wise. But I'm forever checking my phone to know kind of know where I am in time-space. Time-space for me is like a total, it's a man-made construct. I can't believe in it because I can't feel it, if that makes sense. And once they figured out that I didn't have this ability to structure myself, I got given a mobile phone by the college, and someone would ring me Jodie, you've got to be here now, you've got to do this now, and slowly I would start to get a system whereby okay, I know what I'm up to. Because before that, and I was really, really diligent, I wanted to do well, but I'd be turning up on the wrong day at the wrong place, and and I was capable, I could learn, I just just didn't know where I was meant to be. So yeah, it was a challenge. It was a real challenge.
I'm really, really interested to see how you deal with being not only being introverted in nature, but you deal with this situation when you perform or you create. Are there any kind of rituals that you have to go to in order to sort of pep yourself up?
Yeah, with performing, I used to have to almost take 2 whole days before any gig just to like self-isolate. So I'd go right into myself. It'd be a nightmare to be around during that time. It's just like, don't come near me. I didn't have any space to deal with how other people were feeling around me. So yeah, this kind of going into a little bubble. These days, I think I've learnt to have a much higher level of tolerance. So generally speaking, I only need to bubble, as it were, for like an hour or two before a gig. In terms of creative process, whether that's songwriting or painting, oh man, yeah, I need a couple of days to myself to allow all of the world that I've kind of absorbed to fall away and just feel my whole system kind of return to itself. And then that's when the creation can happen. I feel like, oh, okay, I've got space now. I can write, I can paint. Yeah, it just feels like otherwise I'm carrying like these backpacks and I can't kind of get into the zone I need to create.
What are some of the other things that you would like people to understand about interacting with a synesthete and also an introvert?
We just need space. That's the big one. It's just like, to me, taking a week to myself feels like 3 seconds. It really does. And so if I've said like I need to have a couple of days to myself, I feel like I'm not really asking for very much there, but I recognize that someone who's maybe an extrovert, to them, that's going to feel like, oh man, really depleting. So when you're extroverted, you recharge your batteries in company. And when you're introverted, they lose charge in company. So yeah, I think that's what it's all about. It's about finding these kind of areas of compassion for how introverts and extroverts both function. And then also, as an introvert, expressing exactly what your needs are. But I'm speaking to myself here when I say that. I'm still not fluent in expressing my needs. I tend to take myself near to the edge of burnout and then go, right, now I need to be alone.
Do you know what? It's fascinating because, again, just because I'm relating to it and going, oh, thank God there's someone that I can relate to here. You take yourself to that burnout space because it's that combination, isn't it, of not really knowing where that boundary is, but also everyone else's expectations that you're carrying. You don't want to let anyone else down. Mm-hmm. And when you understand that what you're trying to do energetically is really, really big. So just interacting with someone is a really, really big thing, isn't it? And like you rightly said, like some people really thrive on that. And, we've got some mutual friends in London who, their idea of hell would be to be on their own for a week. Yeah. Just with a book or just like in the countryside. But yeah, oh my goodness, it's really, really interesting. And I hope that listeners that are listening to this can either relate so that they don't feel so alone in that aspect of needing that space and that recuperation. But also for those people that are quite fun loving who just don't get why some certain people are gently always turning them down to go to events. That it is nothing personal, that it is just a massive sensory overload.
Yeah, I mean, if I look back on like my earlier days in the music business, I would go to gigs and then I'd have to do the A&R stuff and like radio interviews, and it would all be going quite well. It seemed that I could ride on adrenaline and the buzz of the whole thing. But then this interesting thing would happen. I'd get home and I'd spend 2 days in just floods of tears. Not because anything had gone wrong. Everything had been absolutely excellent and going perfectly. But my whole system was just completely overwhelmed. And at the time, because I didn't understand what it was to be an introvert, or even that I was an introvert, at the time it was so difficult. I'd just melt down. I'd have to, hide under a blanket pretty much in the dark and would just sob my eyes out for 2 days. But it becomes easier once you understand what it is and you no longer feel like it's odd or weird or there's something wrong with you. I think that's the big problem. You can sometimes have this question mark when you're younger. What's the matter with me? Everyone else is out there and being social and having a good time. And why do I find that so hard? And once you embrace it and go, hold on a minute, this is me. I can't help it. It's kind of the wiring of this machine. Then you can start to adapt the way you move in the world and actually get the world to, march to your beat for a change.
Yeah. And it's just so refreshing to hear someone say it, because I'm sure that a lot of people out there are thinking the same thing, but they just don't have the heart to go, you know what, I don't want to let anyone down. Wow. What do you consider to be the most beautiful thing about your synesthesia and your introvertness?
I very rarely get that sense of what people describe as loneliness, because there's always so much going on. I can just kind of tune into those different aspects of seeing it. It has a beauty to it. I think I can't imagine not seeing this in my everyday. It's so a part of what's always there. It can feel quite ethereal, almost like tapping into, I don't know, this kind of higher vibration in the world.
I think that's a beautiful answer, actually, because I was trying to think about this as I was writing that question to give to you. I was thinking, what is the thing that I love about it? Because a lot of the times it can be frustrating if you're trying to, like, say to a producer or something, or can you make that sound white, for instance, or whatever. But like you rightly say, the beauty of it is, in fact, I'll demonstrate this. So I went to a gig with a band called Snarky Puppy, and their music has loads and loads of different layers to it, which can, I think, in a synesthetic way, especially if you see shape with colour, when the music is playing, and I know that that's something that you in particular do see, it can almost give you an adrenaline rush when those waves of colour and those shapes are moving in the air, can't it? It's like you suddenly, where the overwhelm of being in the crowd might be an issue, when the music takes over and it washes over you and you see all those kind of dancing shapes and sounds, that can be the saving grace, can't it? Because you're almost filled with adrenaline, you're almost filled with love for what's being created in front of you. Do you get that?
I completely get that. Yeah. And it's beautifully said. Yeah. I mean, there's certain songs that really trigger that for me. Especially listening to music like Bjork, for instance, I can see like this permanent, like they're like swirling kind of tidal waves that fall and drop. And for me, I've noticed that music I really love tends to have kind of a maroony red quality to it. I mean, I love all kinds of music, but the colors that really take me on this far out kind of trippy visual journey, they tend to have like these rolling kind of maroons and reds, and usually on quite a far back black background. And I almost feel like I'm kind of swimming in it. It's like the sound becomes this 3D reality that goes beyond. I mean, normally I see it like on a rectangular screen in front of me, but with certain types of music, it wraps all the way around. It's like the music goes through. And as you just said, there's different shapes to it. Like they can form different patterns and shapes, almost kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fractals in a way. It has that kind of infinite like unfolding that can happen as the song goes on.
The maroon red thing I totally get. As someone, you know, who's really drawn to red and black, I wonder if that's like an overall synesthetic thing. I'd be really, really interested if any listeners out there are synesthetes, whether or not they're also drawn to the same kind of colours, because that seems to have been almost like a bonding factor in our relationship as well. And I can remember when we first started at the Academy of Contemporary Music, I can remember you walking into the room and sitting down next to me on our very, very first day and just feeling like, oh yeah, I found a spirit animal here, because she's so energetically similar. And thank God for that relationship through ACM, because I think also when you are having those overwhelms or you're seeing this stuff and all the rest of it, having someone that you can bond with or having someone close that you feel really connected with, I think is a very, very introvert, extrovert, synesthetic thing. Just having like those really, really strong relationships with people that you can trust in those environments where you might feel a little bit overwhelmed, or you can experience those amazing waves of music, color and shape together, and you kind of get that you're kind of feeling the same way. Is there a particular song or artist that you struggle to listen to because of the color and shape that comes out of their music?
Yeah. I mean, this is going down on a recording. People are going to hear this. So yeah, always trying to be PC and not say who I struggle with. But definitely, I mean, there's quite a few particular voices that spring to mind. And yeah, the thing that happens is, and I think, you've described this is me actually paraphrasing you here, they tend to appear as like these kind of spiky brownie type colors.
Yes.
I'll let you say. I know who's going to come to mind, and go ahead, Kat. Go ahead. I'm not saying it.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to get so many complaints about this. Okay. So just to remember, people that are listening, it's not the person, it's the soundscape that they create.
It's the sound we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, it's the sound. Yeah. And anybody that's close to me will know that I have to actually leave a room when this particular person sings. Let's just say she likes to chase pavements and set fire to the rain. Anyway, that particular person's voice and just the combination of that voice with the music that she produces literally makes me leave the room. And it got to the point where I actually got bullied when I was working as a teacher by Stephen Richards. Holla, Stephen Richards. I know your intentions were just for fun, but oh my goodness. So he found out very, very quickly, who's my head of music and a legend at Lou Academy. He found out very, very quickly that I couldn't hear Adele. So he would intermittently throughout the day pop a student into my classroom, get them to hold up their phones to my ear and play Adele until I left the room. And oh my goodness, it was just a nightmare. And that's the cruelty out there that synesthetic people are having to face, my friends. But yes, I think you've been very diplomatic to hand that baton over to me. Come on, give us a clue as to who you feel the same about.
I mean, I could say something truly horrendous here. I'm just going to write out an entire genre of music. So I can really see, this is where it's difficult, because unless you're in my head seeing what I see, you're going to think, what is the matter with her? So it's a lot of it can be to do with the timbre or the texture of the way it's recorded, but there's also something to do with chord progression. So I really struggle with a lot of blues music. I find that it just creates this really uninteresting pattern of visual that, like 12-bar blues, I kind of just see lumpy brick movements in the mind's eye, and they're always like this kind of just drabby kind of color, and they're not really moving very far up the screen. It's like there's nothing in there for that inspires the visual to take off. And do remember, this isn't a choice. This is just like the way it is. So I'm experiencing this without any sense of agency in what's happening. And some pop music, but again, I'm not sure whether that's to do with the songwriting, because it can be a bit obvious. It's sometimes stuff that goes too freaking yellow. Like, I can't handle that. And generally, if a white background appears, it's like, right, we're out here. A lot of early, I'm going to show my age here. A lot of early Christina Aguilera, couldn't handle it. It was all white background yellow, and also the timbre of the voice. That whole like vocal fry thing that was happening at the time. They're like, that kind of Britney thing. Yeah, it's a challenge. On the flip of that, give me something like weird, well synthesized kind of jazz, and the visual just goes bananas, like kind of like streamers of green and blue going off in all directions, and it like curls around, and it feels really delicious to watch. So yeah, there's definitely certain things that are more enjoyable than others to listen to / watch.
Solidarity, sister. Solidarity.
Yeah.
So this takes me so nicely and neatly onto your artistic expression of your synesthesia. Now, I like to dabble with art, but when I see what you can produce, it resonates in a place in me that I just, oh my goodness, it just, I can almost feel what you've managed to paint when you're painting sound, and it's just so original and so beautifully executed. But what I want to know from you is, what are you trying to personally capture when you draw?
Well, first of all, thank you. I can feel my system going into a slight kind of contraction hearing any level of praise, because it feels kind of, what I do feels out of my control. So I guess maybe describing the process would make it easier. So I'll listen to a song. Say recently, the one I kind of got into was This Woman's Work by Kate Bush, this really, beautiful, mournful song. And I was listening to it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, the visuals here are so strong. So I just thought, can I, just be with this song, put it on loop, and then just sense like, okay, what color is coming here? And literally just squeeze out that color with the paint, maybe mix it with another paint so that it's, more akin to what I'm seeing. And then just starts, it sounds really unspecific, start sloshing it around on the page in the shapes that I'm seeing in my mind, and just being really true to what it is I'm experiencing. And something that I found when I first started doing this was this moment of, it felt so therapeutic. Like once the painting had finished painting itself, I'd look at it and go, wow, there it is on the outside. And there's something very reassuring about that. It was like I was able to kind of lance my mind of this stuff that goes on internally. And almost by putting it externally, yeah, it felt like releasing something.
When you're in that space and you're putting it onto that canvas and you're trying to capture that movement, do you find that you kind of go into a bit of a frenzy with it? Are you like a mad scientist where your arm just does its own thing, or are you trying to really sort of be mindful of how to express the pattern?
Well, I've noticed that if I endeavor at all to be mindful of what I'm doing, it goes to absolute pieces. So it suddenly becomes very rigid, and what I end up with is something that looks utterly contrived and quite frankly rubbish. So I'm learning to really get in touch with my internal free child and just play, because actually when I step into truth and become, as you just said, the mad scientist, that's when the inspiration seems to flow more freely. So yeah, I think honesty is like everything. If the flow isn't honest, it's gonna translate as dishonest.
I utterly agree. And when I look at your work, you can really tell that you've paid attention to that honesty. It's very, very authentic. And weirdly, I think anybody that isn't synesthetic would still be able to visually sort of not empathize, that's the wrong word, but feel a sort of symbiosis with the painting if they were to listen to the music, because it's almost like another language just being expressed on canvas. It's really, really hard for someone to explain what it is you're doing without going and actually seeing it. So I do actually encourage everyone right now, just pause this interview, go and have a look at Jodie's page, and then come back and then carry on listening to what she has to say. So can you remember what your first commission was, and how did you feel giving that painting away?
Oh, good question. So my first commission was for a dear friend and a beautiful soul. He's a songwriter producer called Elliot Kennedy, and he's actually got I'm going to be plugging him now, got his first personal album coming out around about now, actually. And, he's, I've known him for quite a long time. I've done some session singing for him in the past. We started writing an album together. But yeah, he asked if I would paint the front cover for his single that he's actually just released, which is called When Love Breaks Down. And it's this amazing soul song with this fantastic middle eight, it just makes your heart break in half when you listen to it. So it was a real honor to have the chance ahead of it being released to immerse myself in this beautiful, beautiful track and his kind of lush, rich vocals, and just see, one, tap into him as an artist and, kind of get a feel for him. And that was interesting because it's like, ooh, that also stimulates visuals. I didn't realize that before. Like a human has their own resonance. So I was tuning into that, and then also how the song was appearing and letting that guide the paints. And yeah, it's quite a process. I found it tough doing a commission. It took me about 2 weeks to do the painting, and part of that was me standing in my own way slightly. There's this concern, isn't there? When you're doing something for someone else, it means so much more. It's like singing at a wedding, you just don't want to get it wrong because it's so important. And, I finished it, and my brave moment was like, oh my goodness, I got to take a photo of this and send it to him now and see if he likes it. And I remember just sending it and thinking, please reply quickly. I can't handle this. I'm not going to be able to eat or drink until I hear what you think. Unfortunately, he liked it. And yeah, and then came the process of, oh my goodness, I've got to give this baby away now. Because, it's like, it feels like you've given birth to something. And I know you'll relate to this. So each time you write a song or you paint a painting, it's like a little baby. It's like, this is something that's come from within you. And Fortunately, Elliot is creative enough himself to have recognized that. So he did this wonderful backwards and forwards dance with me that lasted about a month to figure out like how, like, did I really want to give him the painting? And, finally at last, it was able to leave the delivery room and get on its way. And and at the end of the day, it belongs to, it does belong to him. But it was a heck of a process. I didn't realize quite how attached I am to the things that I create. So, it was a beautiful learning experience. I saw it as a real opportunity to grow and develop and go, right, okay, you can't just... But like my house at the moment, I've got paintings just stacked up everywhere. In fact, I had to buy a new set of shelves off of Gumtree last week from a guy down the road because I can't store any more paintings. They're just babies everywhere. I'm like an artistic creche at this point in time. So yeah, it was tough, but I've learnt my lesson that at some point I've got to hand these babies over, or else I'm just going to there's just no room. I'm not going to have anywhere to sleep. I'm going to be sleeping on canvas.
Oh, well, obviously it's now time for an exhibition and gallery space. I'm just going to put that out there now so that people can see this incredible work. Okay, so I'd like to play a little game, and I'd love actually, if you're listening to this, to see if you can play along with this. So I'm going to ask Jody what colour she sees, just like straight after a count from 3, 2, 1 on 3 different songs. I'm going to shout out at the same time what I see when I think about the overall chorus colour of these particular songs. And if you're listening, I'd like you to play along at home and just see if you get anything similar. So the first song that I would like you to think of, just the overall colour of the chorus, please, Jody. So the first one we're going to look at is Fame by David Bowie. 3, 2, 1, red. Same. That's so cool. Okay, Into the Unknown by Panic at the Disco. 3, 2, 1, purple.
Silver.
Ooh, nice. And finally, Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. 3, 2, 1, aqua.
Green.
Oh, so similar. Oh my goodness. That's really, really interesting. So if you're playing along at home, I'd love to know some of your answers. If you saw the same things that we did, or whether or not you saw something different, just absolutely post it into the comments on this, because it's so interesting to find out, isn't it? So I'm just going to go back to synesthesia in general again. Do you see colours when you think about the days of the week?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it depends where I'm stood in my visual experience. So, and it's really hard to describe that. It depends whether I'm in the day thinking of Monday, or if I'm stood trying to look at the whole week and plan my week. So my experience of colour really changes. I think if I stand back and I look at the whole week, it has this weird pearlescent translucency to it. And it's more about where it sits in visual space. And again, for me, it's this up to the right situation that occurs. And then the weekend goes up a block and across. So yeah, for me, I think like Monday would be brown, Tuesday is blue, Wednesday is red, Thursday would be indigo. Now, Friday is red with then like these kind of like stripy, staggery things happening at the top. And then Saturday is kind of a yellowy color again with the change at the top. And Sunday is like a kind of a burnt orange going up at the top into like a dark browny black.
A little bit similar to mine. So I see Monday is black, which is almost like a brown. Tuesday is also blue. Wednesday to me is yellow. Thursday is brown. Friday is red. Saturday is white, or that pearlescent thing that you're talking about. And Sunday to me is like a sort of turquoisey blue. So there are some weird similarities in sort of like the tonal aspect. And I know what you're talking about with like when you're actually within that day. So even though when I'm sort of looking at the week, I'm thinking sort of Monday's black, when I'm actually in Monday, times of the day will change colour. So for instance, I might get to 4 o'clock and then it will be like purple. So 4 would be like a purple time, if you know what I mean. Is that how you kind of figure it out, or is it a bit different to you when you're actually within the day?
I love your description. I can totally see what you're saying. I do think my experience of that is slightly different. It's not system that I tune into that much. And I think that could be why I struggle to organize myself. Yeah, I don't think it's hugely strong for me, the days of the week one, but how I visualize the week out in front of me, like if I'm stood back from it, it's like, okay, what am I going to do next week? And then I see, the way Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday go along in a line. And the weekend is disproportionately large compared to the rest of the week. So I think in terms of vertical, this is going to sound mental now, vertical space, like Tuesday and Thursday feel like they have more vertical space to me. Like I'm going to have more time on a Tuesday and a Thursday than I would say on a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Friday, which obviously isn't the case. And I also happen to like Tuesdays and Thursdays better than the other days of the week. So maybe that's why.
That's so interesting. I don't have that vertical thing. And that must be crazy when you're sort of in that day or trying to describe to people where you are or how you feel about your time. Talking of time, how do you see time? Because obviously you have said that you struggle with sort of organizing that time. Like if I was to say to you, okay, how do you see your year? So let's take the months of the year. Is that linear? Does it go around in a circle? Go for it.
I love this question. So for me, this is one of the strongest aspects of synesthesia. And I didn't recognize this until only a few years ago. So I feel like the year is this huge hoop out in front of me that goes away for, I don't know what the distance would be. It looks like about a mile away in front of me. And I'm forever stood in the middle of January. I can't move where I'm stood. So this means in January I know where I am, but once the other months of the year begin in actual real time, I'm kind of stuck. So I'm having to constantly fumble and guess. Like, okay, January appears to be kind of brown and it's running under my feet kind of horizontally. And then February steps down and away. It's kind of a purple color. January, February. What are the months of the year? March, April, May, June, they're a little bit closer together to each other. But again, the sense of perspective is really like this loop, this hoop that's floating, almost like a distorted bracelet of a giant that's been taken off and then bumped around a bit. It then goes down towards what I take to be the summer, which I think is like June, July. And I can see them in the distance. So they'd be the other side of this big distorted bracelet now. But I can't relate to them. So for me, when I am actually in June and July, there's this sense of, okay, I know I'm in summer, I know I'm in June and July, but my body doesn't know actually what that feels like to be in that month. This is such a weird description. October is like this invisible little month. It's like a little squidged up one. So yeah, I'm sorry to anyone who was born in October. You are just as important to me as the other months of the year. All you Libras out there. November is like, and I don't know if this is a massively overinflated ego because I was born in November, but November is like this quite long looking month. And then it goes into December. And then there's always this confusion of like, is that near the end? How did I get back around here again? How did I get to the end of the year? Because I never experienced the travel around the circle. It's just suddenly I'm back near to where I should be stood when I get to December. And I know that any second now I'll be back in January, like walking back into myself and like, oh, another year's gone round. Now, I discovered something very interesting talking to another synesthete online the other day. This person said to me, what happens if you're looking at the year and you change where your head is? And this had never occurred to me to do this. So I have learned that if I look over my left shoulder, which I'm doing right now, all of a sudden, I'm stood at the end of July. And it's the first time in my life I've been able to switch where I am. So I have to physically move my body. And if I look over my shoulder, I'm looking up at October. And for the first time, October's got a bit of length to it. November looks a bit short and I can see December, January, where I guess I'm not standing anymore. And then February all the way back round to June, then look like this, I can't describe it. It's like a rainbowy ladder going back round. So yeah, this really interesting thing, the actual physical orientation, I can change my location on this 3D map by moving my body. I haven't tried looking at my right shoulder. What happens if I do that? Hold on. Yeah, not a lot.
I really, really love that. I can kind of feel what that must feel like for you. I don't have that same experience. Thank God I think, because it sounds like it's pretty challenging to live with. I kind of like, I see.
Oh man, try booking a holiday with me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you have. Yeah. It's like we had to do it then and there, and just fill in the gaps later, because I didn't know when the holiday was going to happen. It's like, okay, I know that we're booking a holiday, but I'm not really sure when that is.
I think that's another thing, isn't it, with synesthetic people, being in the moment, like being quite impulsive is important, because else stuff just doesn't get done. It just gets forgotten about or whatever. But that was, oh my goodness, that was so fascinating to hear how you see the year. That's really, really cool. So that kind of brings me on to like the next part of my question. What have been some of your biggest challenges, especially when you're creating art? Because if you can't sort of visualize time and space in the same way as everybody else, do you have to, and if you're doing a commission, for instance, do you have to sort of set reminders for yourself? Do you have to physically make that cage of time and work within it? Or do you just go with the flow and fingers crossed, hope it's not a month late?
Doing a commission, in a way, it's nice because it puts some boundaries in. And I find that if I'm beholden to someone else, or if I'm working in a project, or, whether it's recording like a session vocal for someone or doing a commission, it kind of dominates all my thinking. And until I've done it, I can't do anything else in life, to the point where I can occasionally be a bit neglectful in those, work states, because it's so important to me to get this thing done, and it fills up all my brain space. But in terms of me structuring myself, saying like, okay, I want to take this project from A to B to C, I find it really difficult. Yeah. So things can be inclined to drift. So it actually is helpful for me when there's an external factor. What
sort of drives you to keep going? What motivates you to keep this stuff coming out when there must be so many sort of bombardments on your senses that it must make you want to quit sometimes?
It's not actually a choice. It's like breathing or just speaking. I feel like I don't have to find something to drive me. It drives itself. And I can often, it's a good litmus test. Is all well in my world? If all is well in my world, stuff is getting created. If things aren't so well in my world, then the creativity is going to dry up slightly. So if someone's asking me if they send me a backing track, can you write a top line for this? We've got a singer, we need the lyrics and the melody. It's like, oh, okay, I just want to. It's not, that's a non-issue. Or likewise with the painting, I want to dive in. It feels like the color of life, and one of the things that I feel lucky enough to be here to do. Yeah, it's like kind of in my heartbeat.
I love that you said it's in your heartbeat. Oh my goodness, that's such a delicious way of putting it. You're talking a bit about your music now, so let's talk about your musical journey. Can you remember a life-changing moment within your musical journey?
Ooh, well, there's a few. I think the sweetest one was probably my first experience on a stage, which was kind of an in at the deep end. I was 8 years old and I sang at the Paul Arts Centre on Remembrance Sunday with the Bournemouth Philharmonic Orchestra, and I was singing solo a song called Let There Be Peace, which is really beautiful, in front of this massive audience and someone who was the Queen's representative. I don't really know what that means. So that was kind of a big moment, being 8 years old and doing that, and I was absolutely petrified. I remember my whole little body, I was wearing these like pull-up white socks and a little blouse, and I was just trembling all over and wanted to throw up. But afterwards, I just loved it. And, leaping forward a few years, I guess quite a big moment was singing at Live 8 over in Paris. I was very lucky to be able to perform with a French artist called Marc Cerrone, who had a big hit years ago with Supernature. Yeah, he's quite a big deal over in France. And I was just really lucky. It wasn't really, from any of my own aims or efforts. I just happened to, like they always say, in the right place at the right time, and had written a vocal for a remix of one of his songs, and he really liked it. And to be honest, I didn't really realise when I was invited over to Paris that that's what I was going to be taking part in. And that was, I only found that out once I was there. Yeah, it was pretty mega. I'm like, okay, 1 minute I'm in this little hostel room, and the next minute it's like, okay, you've got to be backstage. And there's these kind of big artists hanging around at the time, like, Craig, well, still going, Craig, sorry, Craig David. I didn't even said that like you're not still going. He's awesome, great vocalist. Craig David, and I was having this chat backstage with this really cool Aussie girl who was drinking beer, and I was like, oh, who are you, Bo? And she's like, I'm Tina Arena. I'm like, oh my God, what a voice. The most embarrassing moment for me, and this again relates to not being able to time keep, was I spent the whole day staring at my phone to keep an eye on the time, because I didn't know where I was in time and space, thinking, right, I've got to be on stage at, say, 3 p.m. And then all of a sudden it's like 2 minutes to 3. And I'm like, how did that happen? How did I just lose 2 hours? What actually happened there? Was there a black hole in the dressing room that sucked in all the time? And so I find myself running from the dressing room, like kind of trying to pull I wore these lovely white boots. I thought they were lovely at the time, pulling those on, herring my way around the back of the stage. And who do I run straight into? Bam, Andrea Bocelli. I mean, is there anyone more embarrassing to run into than Andrea Bocelli? So I'm thrown to one side by his bodyguards. And so that was a pretty big deal. I really enjoyed that performance. It was... and it's it was a meaningful event as well. It was nice to have that. Not just was it a big performance, but also had a real kind of meaning and a sense of connectivity to it.
I just love listening to you just so casually putting it out there that you're at such a big event with all these massive artists and you just didn't even know that you were there. It's fantastic to hear.
Well, I didn't, That's always the problem. It's like, am I really here? It is a problem. I mean, I've definitely had moments where I'm about to go on stage and I have to remind myself that it's not a dream. I actually have to move my legs and get onto the stage and do the thing that, it's a strange one, a very strange one.
How do you find that your work affects your personal life?
I mean, this is more about, for me, the crux can be the introversion thing. It's again, the asking, please, can I have the space now? But, right now I'm really fortunate that I'm in a relationship with a really beautiful human being who's also highly creative, and they're completely in support of me expressing myself and gets it. They're like, if I need to go and do something creative, they're like, yeah, go, I got it.
It's really lovely to hear that you're being so supported and that your creativity has been given that space. And thank God, because else we wouldn't have it here to just admire and be around. But, most people turn to creativity because it's a hobby or something that they can do to switch off. But what do you do to relax and switch off instead?
I love walking, so I spend a lot of time walking in nature. Meditation, I say meditation. Recently, my practice has changed from a sitting cross-legged kind of meditation to living meditation, so approaching the day as a meditation in itself. Reading a book. But nature's my key one. I just love immersing myself in nature. And I'm very lucky where I live. I live in the New Forest. So it's all on my doorstep to go and experience.
Looking back at your career now, is there anything that you would have done differently? Or are you quite sort of happy with the order of events and how they've played out?
So, there are definitely, the biggest thing I would change, I would go back in time. I got offered a publishing deal, which I turned down because my lawyer at the time was saying, oh, we can do better. That was a huge mistake. A bird in the hand is definitely a true saying. So if I could go back, I would have accepted that. I don't think you can change anything, can you? It's all unfolding as it has to unfold. It's probably going on in the parallel universe, maybe in a different way that might be even more awesome. But how could it be more awesome? This reality is crazy.
I love that. I love the idea that there's two of you out there just colliding very, very gently in time and space and then just releasing from each other.
Yeah, right.
So in regards to your art, what are your sort of goals? What is it that you want to achieve or hope to achieve in regards to your artwork? What would you like it to bring to the world?
I'd love to. I think one of my aims is to seam together the artwork with some of the music that I've written. I'd love to put an EP out there. In fact, this is kind of in the making at the moment. Put a little EP out there that ties in how I see the song in a painting with actually the song itself. But I'm just very open-minded. You don't really know what time is going to bring to you. So I didn't know I was going to get those commissions. They weren't something I actively asked for. So, maybe it's one of the blessings of not being able to plan. I'm able to just kind of ride on the winds of life as it's unfurling in front of me. And if a few people are able to look at the paintings and they feel in some way that it's added something to their day, if even for a moment, that's a lovely, lovely, lovely thought.
I really love listening to you talking about that. And I hope that some other people take that advice and kind of roll with it, because I know that a lot of people out there are like, right, I must set this goal. I must have this. This is my definition of success. When really, when you just sort of let it all unfold naturally, you bring those little sort of nuggets of success to you, don't you? And they're almost like a magnet to what you're giving out, because you're giving it out in such authenticity. So when it comes to art itself and creating, for all of those listeners out there who may be aspiring artists or don't really know where to start, what advice would you give them?
Just do it. It's very Eckhart Tolle, power of now. Just if you're feeling to paint, go and buy a paintbrush, go and buy some paint. Don't overthink it. I had no plan to pick up a paintbrush and paint. Actually, what happened was I had a little accident. I broke my arm. So I wasn't able to play the piano, but I still felt like, I've got to create something. And it turned out I had, knocking around in some box somewhere from hundreds of years ago, I had some paintbrushes and some paints. And I thought, I'll just have a little bit of a splosh about with these paints, and realized that I really loved it. And that's the thing. If you're feeling like a love or a passion welling up inside of you, just do it. I think one of the problems is in life we stand in our own way, and man, am I talking to myself when I say that. But yeah, it's that get out of your way moment. If you're feeling like you want to do it, just have a go and let go of the inner critic, that voice that's saying, but it needs to be perfect. It needs to be a certain way. And don't, just don't compare yourself. Don't look left and right at what other people are doing. Do your thing. It's special. It's unique.
Yes. I'm jumping for joy as you're saying that right now and putting a fist pump into the air. Absolutely brilliant advice. Now, obviously, this is called the Brave Moment podcast. And I know that you've spoken briefly on what you consider to be your bravest moment, but in terms of looking at your whole entire life, can you pinpoint a moment or a couple of moments where you felt you were being brave? I mean, obviously it's a retrospective question, but sort of mentally, physically or spiritually.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be really naked here with this and really vulnerable and just speak my honest truth, because I think it's the only way to be. I think for me, a real brave moment in my teens, I had some real struggles with an eating disorder, which meant that I spent kind of a year in and out of treatment centres and stuff. And I think a real brave moment for me came when I came back out and into the world and had to go to school and face being that strange person, that odd person, and just holding on to like my own center, my inner light, and knowing that, I'm on a path. I don't know where it's going yet, but even back then I had this sense of, time is going to unfold as it's meant to unfold. And you can't control it. You can't control what's going to happen next. But I could sense inside like, there's a light here. And, like kind of following that, if you feel into the depths of you, everything's as it's meant to be, all is well. You are exactly as the universe designed. So that was a brave moment, kind of stepping into that and trying to get out and live again. Other brave moments, leaving a challenging relationship. I think that takes a lot of strength. I spent 10 years of my life in a relationship in which I learned an awful lot, but it wasn't right for me. It wasn't right for either partner. And unpicking myself from that situation, gathering myself back together and learning to love myself in a non-trite way, like to really feel this sense of marriage to oneself and to one's own needs, to really become intimate with who you are as a human, and to kind of reshape yourself in the world after you come out of something like that. I think it can be a challenge. You can feel very rudderless and at sea. It's like you've been in this one situation for so long, and it's in some ways been very detrimental, but in other ways it's a huge learning curve, and that's what makes you the person that you are. So I guess, coming out of a challenging relationship and stepping up into myself, learning to embrace the power of what I am and what's available to me. That was kind of a brave moment. To not eating the last Malteser last night as well. That was a brave moment.
Oh, I can totally relate to that one for sure. Oh my goodness, it's so important. Everything that you've just said, and especially, for men and for women as well, to know that once you do step up into yourself, look what can be achieved. I mean, you're in a beautiful relationship with the right person. You're creating this incredible art, and it's just absolute testament to your growth and your accepting of yourself, which is unbelievable. And I'm really, really glad that you felt you could be vulnerable on this particular podcast and talk about, all of those things. So I hope that, a lot of people listening will take that to their hearts and learn from it as well. Okay, so we are here. We're at the very, very end of this interview. I think I'm just going to have to get you on in another 12 months and see where you're at and ask you some more crazy questions because, you're a wonderful guest. So I'm going to put you straight into a quick fire round. Dun, dun, dun. So what I would like you to do is I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd just like you to say the first thing that comes to your head. Are you ready, Jody Elms?
Oh, I think so. I'm sat on the edge of my chair. Let's go.
Favorite art medium?
Music.
Your hero?
Ooh, David Bowie.
Best friend at school?
Oh, a girl called Kirsty Noakes, and I've lost contact with her and I don't have her details.
Shout out to Kirsty.
Yeah.
Favorite teacher?
I have to say too, Liz Naylor, who stopped me being on the delinquent trajectory I was on by discovering that I could sing, and also Alan Duffield, who was my performing arts teacher.
Favorite motivational song?
Bachelorette by Bjork.
Proudest moment?
Proudest moment. Oh, that's difficult when you have imposter syndrome. Proudest moment. Probably any time this sounds so highfalutin, but it's true. I think when you manage to, in my voice coaching, like what I've managed to pull myself together and really turn up for someone, even when I've been struggling in my personal life. I think those are probably my proudest moments, and seeing that the other person goes from the difficult place they were in into a place where they're smiling because you've been there for them.
Oh, that's a good answer. Okay, epic fail.
Oh my God. MTV Music Awards in Milan. Epic fail on 2 accounts. Don't wear a skirt that barely covers your bottom and a thong when the stage is 8 feet off the ground. And request to lip sync if you have tonsillitis and you've pretty much lost your voice. So that was my epic fail. Yeah, MTV Music Awards in Milan. Terrible.
Best piece of art in the world.
Oh, best piece of art in the world. I don't know how to answer. You, Kat, you're the best piece of art in the world.
You get 10 points for Gryffindor on that.
Thank you.
What's your favourite piece of art that you've produced?
Oh, my favourite piece of art that I've produced is a song called Lemons and Milk, which I haven't yet put out there. It would be that one, yeah.
I can't wait. You'll have to let us know when it's out so we can put a link in, because that sounds awesome. Just from the title. If you could have any other talent in the world, what would it be?
Any other talent in the world, what would it be? Oh my goodness. To be able to experience time properly so that I could organise myself and get a little bit further forward.
I love it. What's your favourite book?
My favourite book, Quiet by Susan Cain.
Favourite trait in human beings?
Oh, has to be kindness.
Worst trait in human beings?
Lack of self-confidence, I think. Yeah. Internally, that voice that talks you down, I think that's the worst trait.
Favourite self-attribute?
Favourite self-attribute? Empathy.
Worst self-attribute?
Worst self-attribute would be, I can be really unconfident sometimes and quite shy.
Tea or coffee?
Tea. Every kind of tea.
Favourite country?
Favourite country? Well, I haven't seen all the countries yet, and at this rate probably aren't going to be able to. But like in terms of the actual land itself, I have to say when I lived in Colorado for a bit, there's something about the Rockies.
What's your annoying habit?
My annoying habit? I do this thing where if I'm watching telly and, say, eating something that has a wrapper of some sort, I will deliberately screw it up and then throw it across the room. And this, for me, is actually a really empowering act. I feel like I'm an adult and I've got the choice, if I want to screw up wrappers and throw them across the room onto the carpet and make a mess. I feel like there's something quite empowering about choosing to make a mess. So that's probably an annoying habit, I would imagine.
So many people are going to go home right now and do exactly that this evening. I can't wait. I hope it's not spaghetti for some kids. Favourite animal?
Oh, snow leopard. Definitely a snow leopard.
Mine too. Oh my goodness. I've just watched this documentary on the snow leopard, actually on Disney+. There are other streaming services available, which was all about capturing on film the first snow leopard family in the world. And it's unbelievable. Just absolutely check it out. I'm so with you with that. What's your favourite food?
My favourite food would be, oh my gosh, I love food. Sometimes it's the simplest things, just like a lovely hearty soup, crusty bread, oodles of butter. That, or, that's the public version. Chocolate. Yeah, I'm pretty predictable. Chocolate.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Just be. And that's more specific than just be yourself. I think just be.
Very, very good. Finally, what smell reminds you of home?
Oh, the smell that reminds me of home is like the smell of like oak trees and bark and wet leaves. I think growing up in the New Forest. Yeah, it's those kind of outdoors woodlandy smells remind me of home. Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end your quickfire round. Yay! You survived. You get A-star for effort.
Oh, thank you, Kat. I'm popping that little A-star on my yellow jumper.
Excellent. So finally, just before we leave this interview, what advice would you give to the world right now?
I think just stop for a moment and look up at the sky or look as far as you can see wherever you are at the moment and take a nice deep breath. I think that's always helpful.
That's absolutely wonderful, wonderful advice. Thank you so, so much for taking the time today. It's been such a pleasure as always. If people are interested in your work, where can they find you online?
So it's, this is a spelling nightmare. It's at JE, then SYNESTHESIART. So as in synesthesia, but then with an art on the end, synesthesia, and the A becomes an art. Wow, I'm just totally going to change that handle in the future.
And if people are interested in your music, where can they find you?
If you just Google like featuring Jodie Elms, Jodie with an IE, that's most stuff comes up there, or jodieelms.com. And I think I'm on Facebook as Jodie Elms. At least I hope I am. That's my name.
Thank you so much, Jodie. It's been so lovely to hear your voice. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Kat, thank you so much for having me on.
It's such a pleasure. When Jodie asked me how I viewed music, time and space, I had no idea that I too was synesthetic. Much like herself, I just assumed that everyone saw music, numbers and letters in colour and shape. But after a few tests at the University of Plymouth, it turns out that I was also one of a small section of society that experienced things in a slightly different way. Synesthesia comes with its own set of rules. For instance, background noise for most people is exactly that. But for synesthetes, we often suffer with misophonia because we not only see the colour of the noise and the shape, but the sound is sharper and emotionally charged. It is often accompanied by things such as dyslexia or other neurodivergent qualities, because we are quite literally wired differently in our brains, leading to problems with time, environment, socialising, and a hyper-awareness of energetic and emotional transaction. But as Jodie says, living without it would take away so much of the joy that it brings. Being able to see music in colour and shape makes for an incredible experience at concerts, when chanting or meditating, and also when constructing a song that you've written, which is why painting sound comes very naturally to Jodie. And as a result, she is producing extraordinary pieces of collectible and abstract art. Jodie is unafraid of completely authentic expression. In fact, because she has to be very mindful of her own interaction day by day, due to her dyslexia and synesthesia combined, to be anything else would be extremely challenging for her. Being synesthetic can also lead to the extrovert-introvert conundrum, which is probably why Jodie and I have remained dear friends for so long. Both of us are naturally introverted, despite appearing otherwise in social situations, and find that the best way to interact with people is to be able to control the environment we are in. By being the performer, there is a natural barrier between social interaction and yet being the life and soul of a party. If you bring the fun, it takes the pressure off having to interact in a way that feels overwhelming, say, in a crowd or with a big group of friends. Having a stage between yourself and the rest of the world can be a very safe way for introverts to maintain a social life without the pressure of socializing. It's a neat trick if you think about it, because we appear to be extroverted, but we can quite happily go home and sit quietly with, say, a house rabbit named Jasper and read a good book whilst the rest of the world carries on regardless. Because of our mutual understanding of each other, we can go months and sometimes years without checking in, and yet be totally relaxed with each other when we do interact. It's sometimes hard for other friends to understand because they see the performer first and assume that that is the essence of our personality, and so friends can get lost or hurt along the way because introverts can sometimes appear slow at answering texts, or might not want to hang out in a group, or may go ages without contact. But that doesn't mean that we don't care. It's just that we would probably prefer to see you on a one-to-one basis or in a gentler environment with less noise and people. And Jodie is absolutely right. A little time and space is all an introverted artist needs to recharge and get back out there and share their gifts. And weirdly enough, a lot of performing artists fall into the extrovert-introvert category, taking up things like writing, poetry, singing, painting, and photography as a way to communicate with the world the rich, imaginative landscapes that lie within their minds. Jodie has had to adapt her gifts through the pandemic, and luckily has found a fresh and new creative calling that may otherwise not have manifested due to lack of time or space to do so. In doing so, she shows us that surrender and going with the natural flow of things is important in order to continue to be creative. Don't ever feel that just because you're known for one art form that you can't steer in another direction and begin again in a different one. Creative people are creative people, which means that we are highly adaptable, drawn to express however we feel we need at the time, and quite naturally are drawn to learning new things because we are incredibly curious and self-aware. A lot of experimental artists have grown in popularity when they do branch out and try something new. It only adds to your process and expands the creative comfort zone in your mind. The pandemic has provided a lot of space to reassess our directions, and if you resonate with that, don't be shy. Try that new art form you're so curious about. Through lockdown, I've been everything from a painter to a Chinese flute player to a therapist to a podcaster. And when people ask me what I do, I simply reply with, I'm a creative artist. Or as our future guest Zara Janjua would say, I'm a multi-professional. You are always more than one thing at any one time. You may be a Zumba dancing policeman or a scrapbooking chef. Whatever you do, try and be all of it. Don't ever feel embarrassed or weird about being more than one thing. Share your passions freely, and I guarantee you will find a whole other community out there who share your need to paint tiny dolls whilst watching crime thrillers. Jodie unabashedly told us of her quirky childhood and totally embraces her, and I air quote this, wonderful weirdness, and I wholeheartedly ask you to do the same. To be completely free, to be able to share your whole identity with others encourages new conversation, self-awareness, and interaction on a deeper level, allowing intimacy and vulnerability to rise to the surface. Try this exercise. Stand in front of a mirror after taking a shower or when you are completely naked. and smile at yourself. Notice the curves of your body, the colour of your eyes, the shape of your lips. Take yourself in. Imagine your favourite song playing in your mind, and now start to move your body to that song. Close your eyes and dance with yourself. Let the energy build and really go to town in all your nakedness. When you're done, take a deep breath in and out. Allow your body to relax, and if your eyes are still closed, open them. Now pull a funny face in the mirror. Pull a few. Let yourself go and surrender to the absurdity of this new situation. Now think about one of the wonderfully weird things about yourself. This could be physically or mentally. Say to yourself in the mirror, I am, say your name, and I like to, say your weird thing. And then pull a silly face. Say it louder if you like. Do some more dancing. Totally surrender to the silliness and freedom of this exercise. When you're done, wrap your arms around your body and give yourself a big hug. Look in the mirror and say, I love you, with as much conviction as you can muster, because you are amazing, and standing in your own nakedness and vulnerability whilst also being beautifully weird can be one of the most loving acts you can do for yourself. Note down the emotions that arise from this exercise. Believe me, there is always a lot to unpack after this one. Write down your reflections in a journal without judgment. Just observe how you and your ego reacted to this particular situation. When you see your wonderful, original, and quirky qualities, it should be a powerful experience. So often we are made to feel ashamed about the way we are. So often we can be belittled by people who don't get us, and sometimes, sadly, this can be closer to home than just at work or online. So like Jodie, embrace yourself entirely. Be honest with yourself and try your best to be honest in your art, whatever it may be. As Jodie says, you can tell when art is forced or perfected or even made with other people in mind. Allow judgment, criticism, or other reflections on your art to be just that, people's reflections. The world would be a very boring place if we all liked the same thing. So try not to take things too personally. Other people's reflections on your art are not their reflections on you, the person. And if your art is true, if you know you've created because you are compelled or passionate about something, then know that the universe has been added to in some way, that you have added to conversation, diversity, and this whole cosmic experience we are all a part of. Do it because you can. That is reason enough. As Rebel Circus says, being called weird is like being called limited edition. It means you're something that people don't see that often. Remember that. So go forth, my quirky, wonderful, weirdly original creatives, and live your best life. And if you can create a way for people to experience just a glimpse into your beautiful mind and how that grey matter interprets the world, then it is your divine duty to share it with us. Be brave and put yourself out there in all your spectacular glory. Next week on the show, we meet makeup artist and Instagram influencer Ruby Hunt, who talks us through her hints and tricks for a professional makeup look. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. If you have a spare moment now, please like, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts in a review on Apple Podcasts, which will really help other people like yourself to find the show. Of course, you can also share the show with your friends by following us at the Brave Moment Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or on Twitter at Moment Brave, or just follow the Linktree on all of our social media platforms. It's been so wonderful to have you all here with me again. Please get in touch with your own stories, and remember, your brave moment starts now. Bye.
edit that bit out. I just said forgetting.
Forgetting?
I don't want that in the recording. Forgetting.
Forgetting.
He'll be a rock, he'll be a rock. Or maybe leave it in, who knows?